Today we're talking about body skincare, and is your sunscreen killing you? Hello TLCers. So I've just come back from France again this year. I was in Nice this time, actually Cap d'Antibes, which is very nice. And I'm sure most of you know, but the French pharmacies, in fact most of the European pharmacies, have got a really interesting wide range of products that we don't have over here or are only in selected stores over here. And a lot of those products tend to be pour le corps, for the body. That's in French. And I just brought some back for you to have a look at. This is SkinCeuticals, a brand that we do have in the UK, as you probably are aware. I'm a big fan of SkinCeuticals products, but we don't have any of the SkinCeuticals body treatments in the UK at all. I think it's just because, you know, it's so cold over here. We very rarely show skin, and if we do, it's maybe just like a small amount of skin, and we seem to just care a little bit less because we're always covered in jumpers and thick clothes and things like that. Whereas over in Europe and other countries that are maybe a bit warmer, barring the Middle East obviously, they tend to have a little bit more feeling that they want to improve the texture and quality of the skin on the body just as much as they do the face. So these are two things that I picked up while I was over in France. The first one is body tightening concentrate. So if you have any areas that are a little bit flaccid, like for example underneath the arm, the abdomen, maybe the buttocks, you could maybe give this a try. I have tried it myself, but actually, I don't have that much skin flaccidity, so it's kind of hard for me to say whether or not I think it's a good product. The ingredients are 2.5% tripeptide, 5% yeast extract, which is humectant, and then 2% hydrolyzed rice protein as well, which is an anti-irritant. I don't know, give it a go. If you've got slightly flaccid skin, why not? This one I have tried, the body retexturizing treatment, because it's quite good for areas where you might have a little bit of dry skin. So for example on the elbow or on the knee. I've used it on my feet as well, and I quite like this one. I would buy this one again. This one I just bought to show you guys. But the body retexturizing treatment has got 17% urea, which is something which will help to break the bonds in the superficial layers of the skin in the epidermis, and it allows the old dull skin to exfoliate off more quickly. It's also got 4% niacinamide, which is good for any pores or textural irregularities that you might have in the skin, and also a little bit of hyaluronic acid as well. Let's talk about sunscreens. So I wanted to explore a little bit more about how it is that we're supposed to be using sunscreens and what the differences are between different sunscreens. So most of my patients tell me that they prefer using a physical sunscreen rather than chemical, and I just wondered, you know, why is that? Why are people preferring to use physical rather than chemical, apart from the way that it feels on the skin? So here is the accumulation of some of my knowledge about sunscreens. So first of all, let's discuss what the differences are between a physical and a chemical sunscreen. So a physical sunscreen would be something that contains zinc oxide, titanium oxide, and it's something that stays in the stratum corneum of the skin, so that's in the superficial layers of the skin. When the ultraviolet radiation hits your skin and you have a physical sunscreen on, it gets reflected by the zinc and titanium oxide, if you're wearing zinc and titanium oxide obviously, and therefore it doesn't cause any kind of free radical formation or anything like that sometimes you can see with a chemical sunscreen, because a chemical sunscreen penetrates more deeply into the skin and it converts that ultraviolet radiation to heat and free radicals. So it's a little bit weird that a product that is supposed to protect you from radiation, protect you from the sun, actually causes the production of more free radicals in the skin. I've never been able to get my head around that one, really. Examples of chemical sunscreens which are bad, or beg your pardon, chemical sunscreen ingredients which are bad would be OXYBENZONE, OCTINOXATE, and homosalate. And if you have a look at your sunscreen that you have at home, just check it out to see whether or not you've got any one of those ingredients listed on the back, because if you do, I would pretty much just throw that away. Just get that sunscreen and just throw it straight in the rubbish, because it's probably doing you more harm than good. There is a group called the Environmental Working Group who have looked at the safety of various different sunscreen ingredients, and according to them, 40% of the sunscreens that we commonly use are directly contributing to people having skin cancer. And only 5% of the sunscreens tested met their criteria for being safe and giving good protection, which is a crazy small number. So let's talk a little bit about those top 2 ingredients which are in chemical sunscreens that you should really not be using. The first one that I mentioned to you was oxybenzone. So that was given an 8 out of 10 badness rating by this environmental working group. The reason for that is because it's a hormone disruptor. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who cares, right? Who cares if it's a hormone disruptor? You hear about hormones, you know, they're in cattle, in meats. It's not really something which is well understood. But what a hormone does is it helps to regulate all the important things that are going on in your body. So say, for example, your fertility, or whether or not you're hungry, whether or not you're tired. All these processes that occur according to some kind of rhythm are regulated by hormones. So your hormones kind of decide whether you're fat or thin, or, for example, how tall you're going to be as you're growing up. So if you've got a product that you're applying directly onto your skin, which is disrupting that hormone pathway, it's never going to be a good thing. It's always going to be a bad thing to do that. And this particular chemical, the oxybenzone, it was found to decrease fertility in men by 30%. Let me just say that again. So it decreases fertility in men by 30%. I know we all thought it was about how much freedom they had down there and whether or not it was getting a bit too warm for the sperm. But if you're trying to protect your skin and you're using a sunscreen with oxybenzone in it, you're decreasing your fertility by 30%. So maybe don't use that particular chemical. Interestingly, oxybenzone was found in almost all Americans. Isn't that absolutely crazy? So what I mean is evidence of this chemical was found within the cells, within the blood of almost every single American person, showing that it lingers in the system after you've used it. I mean, it wasn't given a danger rating of 8 out of 10 for no reason. It is a pretty dangerous chemical to be using. So maybe try not to do that. The second one was OCTINOXATE. So this one is a estrogen mimic, and it also has effects on fertility as well, as in decreasing fertility. It also has a bad effect on some types of breast cancer. So it increases the growth of specific types of breast cancer cells. Also not a good thing if you're exposing yourself to it by using a sunscreen in the hope that you're going to protect your skin from skin cancer and from burning, to find out later that actually it's got all these negative effects on your hormonal system. And the OCTINOXATE was given a badness rating of 6 out of 10 by the Environmental Working Group. So both bad things. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the problem with using a high SPF. So SPF, you know, when you're in the supermarket or in the drugstore or wherever it is that you go to purchase your sunscreen, you'll see that there are lots of different SPFs available, right the way through from ones which are like SPF 2 or, you know, tanning oils, the ones that you just lather all over your body in the hope of cooking yourself outside and going a lovely sort of burnt, crispy brown shade, all the way through to SPFs 100. So the difference between using an SPF of 50 and 100, like why would you use an SPF 50? Why would you not always just use an SPF of 100? It's because there's actually not that much difference between the two. So an SPF of 50 will block about 98% of UVB radiation, whereas an SPF 100 will block about 99% of when used correctly, of UVB radiation. So there's like 1% difference between the two. And what that does is it kind of gives people the feeling that they can have poor habits in the sun. So you know how it is, you pick up your SPF 100, you're lathering it all over yourself. You're thinking, yeah, I'm pretty much now impervious to the sun's rays. I can go and sit out in the midday sun as much as I like, not worry about maybe having to reapply it or whatever. We'll come to reapplication in a second. Or not wearing a hat or anything like that, because I'm wearing my SPF 100. So that's bad. Also, the difference between SPF 50 and 100 is only for UVB. So SPF is just a marker of how protected your skin is in the sun against ultraviolet B rays, not A, it's B only. B is the wavelength which makes you red, leads to precancerous lesions and squamous cell carcinomas, which is a type of skin cancer. UVA is the one which actually gives you more DNA damage and gives rise to the slightly more serious melanoma, which is again another type of skin cancer. Obviously all skin cancers are bad, but I'm talking about in terms of survival rates. It's much worse for melanoma than it is for the other types. So that's why it's important to protect against both UVA and UVB. So the amount of UVA protection that you will have in an SPF it's not consistent. So for example, normally it will be about the ratio 1 to 3. So UVA will be 1, UVB will be 3. But as you go up in the SPFs, that ratio changes because you can't get a very, 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 very strong UVA protectant. It's only UVB. So that's something to bear in mind as well. I think for most people, using an SPF of 30 to 50 is fine. Even if you're going somewhere that is sort of, you know, very tropical or very hot, as long as you're going to use something that is at least 30, I think that's an okay thing for you to do. The photo stability between chemical and physical sunscreens is also different. So that old adage that you should reapply your sunscreen every 2 hours was brought about when most sunscreens were chemical, not physical. It's because you literally did have to reapply them every 2 hours to maintain the same level of protection. Whereas with most physical sunscreens, you put it on and you probably don't need to reapply it every two hours because most of them do really, really stay on the skin. So the one that I was using a few days ago in Nice when I was over there, copped onto you, I can still actually see some of it on the skin because it had a slight tint to it. So I still have it. And trust me, I have showered. It's not like I haven't showered for a couple of days. I have. It's just still there. It sticks to your skin really, really well. So I don't know why you wouldn't use a physical sunscreen. Okay, so that's all we've got time for today. Next week, we're going to talk again a little bit more about sunscreens. I have left the most important information until then. So we'll see you then for a bit more sunscreen chat. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.